Hi, I'm Sara and welcome to Hen Corner. Today we're making Lateward Buns. This lovely sweet bun made with the original dough from the Brentford roll recipe and filled with creme patissier and raisins. It's special to our bakery here at Hen Corner and we're going to show you how to make them. Now, I don't know how well you know your history, but there is an old ancient recipe for the Brentford roll, and here at Hen Corner in Brentford we love all things Brentford, and the Brentford roll goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, and we're using for the first part of this recipe all the same ingredients for the Brentford roll, and then we're going to add something a bit special to make the filling, and then we'll find out why we've called it the Lateward bun. So a Brentford roll would have in it flour, salt and yeast, as all bread does, and then instead of adding water that you would have in a normal loaf of bread, a plain loaf of bread, we're using all the cakey goodies. We've got butter, milk, eggs and sugar. So let's get combining. For this basic sweet dough we have got 500 grams of strong white flour. It's wheat flour. We're going to put 1 teaspoon of salt. We're going to put 1 teaspoon of yeast. This is instant dried yeast. And then for our liquid we're going to put 250 millilitres of milk. We're going to add to that some butter. We have got 60 grams of butter, and then we're going to put in 2 eggs from our chickens. 1, 2, and then we've got 40 grams of sugar. And this is all in the mixing bowl, and we're going to mix it all up together. Now I'm going to use a dough scraper because I find that is a really easy way to combine all of the butter and the egg yolks. It is a bit of a sticky dough because it's quite a cakey dough. But this dough, this sweet dough, the same ingredients of that old traditional recipe, the Brentford roll, is a real classic in our bakery, and it's very versatile and flexible, and we can make lots of different sweet treats out of this dough. So in the bowl I'm just combining it. Woo! Flicking up everywhere. I want it all mixed together. Once everything's combined together, we can tip the dough out onto the work surface. Now you can see the dough is still rather sticky, but I'm not adding lots of extra flour to it because I don't want to change the recipe. The proportions that we've got here are the right proportions to make these buns. So I'm gathering all the dough together. And then I want to stretch and fold it to develop the gluten. We do this for about 5 minutes until the dough changes structure and texture and becomes nice and soft. And then you can tuck the edges underneath, removing anything from your fingers, because it is a nice soft dough which gives you a nice soft finished bun. Tuck in all the edges, and this finished ball of dough can go back into the bowl for the first proof. We're going to cover it with a tea towel or a plastic bag will do just as well. And we're going to leave this for about an hour to let the yeast ferment, creating lots of lovely bubbles in the soft dough. And then we can come back and shape it into those buns. Whilst our Brentford roll dough is proving, we're going to make the filling for our Lateward bun. But before we make it, let me explain the history of the Lateward bun. I've talked about the Brentford roll and how it's an old traditional roll that was popular here in Brentford, and how it becomes the dough. The dough that we've used here is the dough that we use for a lot of our sweet buns here at the bakery at Hen Corner. And we make loads and loads of sweet buns. We make our cinnamon swirls, we make chocolate twists, almond twists, brioche buns, all kinds of things with this same dough. But the Lateward bun is a bit special. And it came about because one day I decided that I wanted to try and replicate the lovely pain au raisin that we have on holiday in France. And pain au raisin is a laminated dough, a croissant dough that's got crème pâtissière and raisins on the top before it's rolled up and cut into the swirls. And I love pain au raisin, and I thought, what would happen if I took our lovely sweet bun dough and I put some crème pâtissière and some raisins, rolled it up into swirls, cut them and baked them? Would that be good? My goodness, it was good. But I thought I can't call it a pain au raisin because a pain au raisin is made with a croissant dough, and I'm sorry if it's too technical, but a croissant dough is laminated with there's lots and lots of layers, and it puffs up a bit like flaky pastry, and the process of making croissant dough is quite different and it is quite time consuming. So it wouldn't be fair for me to call it a pain au raisin. But we've got a French element, we've got a Brentford element, and how could I communicate that marriage of France and Brentford? And then I remembered, we live here in Hen Corner, we live in Lateward Road, which is in Brentford, and Lateward Road is named after Lady Lateward. And Lady Lateward was a great woman in the Victorian time. She was a philanthropist, and she did what she could to support the community of Brentford, and I love the fact that she wanted to invest and she wanted to care for the people. She wanted to do her best, and what she particularly wanted to do, she was a lady, so she had some money behind her. She wanted to build some cottages for the families that were working in the docks and on the rivers. And so she built this street, and if you've ever been here, you'll know where we live and you know about the park outside. She built this street specifically for the dock workers, so that they could live near to the docks, bring up their families and do the work on the docks here in Brentford, which is a key part of London. You've got the junction of the River Thames, the main route in by river from all other nations. You've got the River Thames, and then you've got the Grand Union Canal, which takes you right up into the middle of the country. So Brentford, so key. Brentford has always been a really important place. So she wanted to support these families, so she built these cottages. And this was great. She built them, the families moved in, she collected the rent, she made sure they were doing fine, and then she fell in love. But she didn't fall in love with a man from Brentford. She fell in love with a man from France, and she didn't want to leave, and he wanted her to move over there, and backwards and forwards, and in the end she decided yes, love would win, and she would go and move to live with her Comte de, can't remember the last bit, in France. And so she had to sell up the cottages here in Lateward Road. And she was very particular. She loved the cottages, she loved the people. So she would only sell the cottages to people who had been there right from the beginning. She would only sell the cottages and hand over those deeds to people that she knew and she trusted. She didn't want the cottages to be changed, and she wanted to make sure the families were looked after. So all the families that had moved in as renting tenants right from the beginning, she gave right to buy. But people that she didn't know very well, she didn't. So when we first moved into Lateward Road, and those of you who've been here or know me, we moved in a few doors down. We actually received all the deeds and the paperwork that was signed by Lady Lateward, and the family, the house that we originally moved into, we were only the second family that lived there. The first family had moved in, renting from Lady Lateward herself, and they'd lived there for a few generations. And then when there were no more of that family, we bought the house, and we were really pleased to have inherited the house, and well, bought the house, but we inherited the paperwork and the story that came with it. And now moving here to the house that we call Hen Corner, this is the first house that was built in the street. It was built by the builder before for his family to live in while he built the rest of the street. So Lady Lateward had been inside this very house, this very kitchen, and has signed the paperwork, the deeds with the builder. So we love that little bit of history, and we love the fact that we've got the love of Brentford and the little love for France coming together in the story of Lady Lateward. And I thought, well, if we're making a new bun that's got a Brentford roll as the main base, but that French twist of the crème pâtissier and the raisins, who better to name it after than Lady Lateward, the lady who actually commissioned this very house, this very kitchen, who has been in here. We are naming it after her. We're going to get on with the first part of the filling. We're going to make crème pâtissier. It's a pastry cream from France. It's very much based on a custard mix. In fact, custard in France is called crème anglaise because we like our custard in England, don't we? So this is how we make it. We take 3 eggs that we've got from the chickens, and we've got a blue one, and we've got a white one, and we've got a big brown one, and we need to separate the eggs first of all. So we want 3 egg yolks for the crème pâtissier, and save your egg whites to make meringues. There we go. Now into here we're going to put some sugar. Now I've got a total of 70 grams of sugar, so we're going to put half in here and half in the saucepan. So we want approximately 35 grams of sugar here and 35 in the saucepan. Also in here with our sugar and our egg yolks we want some flour. This is just holds it together, helps it to stabilise, make sure it doesn't split. This is in this bowl. So in the saucepan we've got the 35 grams of sugar. We're going to put 250 ml of milk, and we're going to put a teaspoon of vanilla paste. Now this is lovely. This has got the vanilla seeds in. You can obviously use vanilla pods, but we make quite a lot of this, and vanilla pods are quite expensive. Just making sure we've got all of the lovely seeds off the spoon. So what we're going to do, we're going to pop the milk with the vanilla and the sugar on the hob just to bring it to a simmer. We don't want it boiling over. And then we're going to whisk the egg yolks with the flour and the sugar. So whilst the milk is coming to a simmer on the hob, we're going to mix the egg yolks with the flour and the sugar. Now it seems quite firm to start with, but persevere and you'll have a light fluffy mix. A balloon whisk is really good for this task because there's lots of strands to the balloon whisk which all help to combine to mix the ingredients but also add air. And the more you mix it, the lighter it gets in colour. This is now light, it's falling in thick ribbons, and it's ready to combine with our warm milk. Our milk has come to a simmer. Give it a quick stir, make sure that sugar is combined at the bottom. And I'm now going to pour the warm milk onto our egg mixture. We can now mix the eggs and the milk together in the bowl, and then it goes back into the saucepan over a medium heat so that it can cook and thicken whilst we're stirring it. we've had the creme pâtissier cooking on the hob in the saucepan, and we actually brought it up to the boil, and it was spitting like a volcano, which it proves it's boiling, because you want it to cook. You want the eggs to cook, you want the flour to cook. And this has now been cooking and boiling like a volcano for about 2 minutes whilst we're stirring all the time. And now we can pour it out into a clean bowl and let this cool, ready to fill our Lateward buns. The creme pâtissier is cool. We've had a little bit of cling film over the top, pressed down so that it stops any condensation or a skin forming. So that's absolutely ready to go. Let's have a look at the dough. Wow, you can see it has doubled in size. So we are going to roll out our lovely sweet dough made with the same ingredients of those Brentford rolls, and then we're going to fill it with our creme pâtissier, some lovely raisins. We're going to roll them up into swirls and proof them again before they go into the oven. Bit of flour on the top, bit of flour on the work surface, and then we're going to tip the dough out. The dough is soft and light and airy, and I want to make sure that we can keep all those bubbles inside the dough, and we're going to gently shape it before we roll it out. So I lift the corners of the dough and then carefully fold it as though I was going to put it into an envelope. So top down a third, bottom up a third. And then I can use my rolling pin to gently roll it out. So the gluten that we developed when we were working the dough is trapping those bubbles of carbon dioxide from the yeast fermenting, and we can have a lovely light soft dough which makes for light soft buns. And now we're going to take the creme pâtissier that is nice and cool, and again using the scraper we're going to just spread it over the top of the dough. I can see all the little specks of vanilla seeds. Now that the creme pâtissier is evenly distributed over the dough, we're going to sprinkle on the raisins. Ooh, a good size handful. And then using a scraper, I'm going to gently roll up the dough. Our Lateward buns have been proving for just over an hour, and they are all big and light and fluffy. All we need to do is to brush them with an egg glaze, which is simply a beaten egg with a little pinch of salt in there, and then we're going to sprinkle them with some lovely pearl sugar, which is all bright and white and crunchy. And then they're going to go into the oven for about 14 minutes at 200 degrees. That's the egg wash, now the pearl sugar. These are going into the oven at 200 degrees for about 14 minutes. Can't wait. Here are our Lateward buns, hot out of the oven. They need to cool for a bit or we'll burn ourselves, but they will be lovely with a cup of coffee. They make a great breakfast, afternoon tea, but definitely a top treat. So why don't you have a go and let us know how you get on. See you next time.